Coming up on UGTV. A special session of the Unified Government of Wyandotte County, Kansas City, Kansas.
Get started. We have a few more commissioners who've told me they're on their way, but in the interest of time, we do want to have a timely start. We have a full agenda tonight with other meetings. So, Mr. Bach, I'll turn it over to you. No, I won't. I'll turn it over to the clerk to announce the meeting and call the roll.
A special session is being held on Thursday, October the 13th, 2016 at 5 o'clock p.m. in the 5th floor conference room for a public safety task force update. Immediately following, the commission will recess from the 5th floor conference room to the 9th floor conference room for an executive session regarding labor and litigation. Roll call. Johnson.
Here.
Kane.
Here.
Markley.
Here.
Walters.
Here.
Philbrook. Bynum.
Here.
Walker. Townsend. McKiernan.
Here.
Mugia. Holland.
Here. All right. I think we're ready to get started. Mr. Bach, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Mayor. And as is noted on the agenda, in 2015, under the leadership of the Mayor, Public Safety Task Force was called together. Appointments from all the commissioners were put on this task force, and many other members of the community are invited, as well as our members of our departments. The task force met several times through the course of the year and came up with several recommendations, which were presented to the commission shortly after the first of this year. As we have been proceeding through the year and implementing various points on this, we wanted to come back and provide an update to the commission and the public and some members of the task force that have come out tonight. We appreciate that as to what's been going on. So with that, I will turn this over to Renee Ramirez, our Human Resources Director, who is accompanied by representatives from our sheriff, police, and fire departments tonight, who are all going to share in the presentation. So with that, Ms. Ramirez.
Thank you, Mr. Bach. This evening, our team is here to represent, to present some of the solutions that we have had on some of the recommendations that were made by the Public Safety Task Force. This evening with me representing Human Resources, I have Jennifer Phillips, myself. I have Sheriff Ash. Chief Terry Ziegler was unable to make it this evening, but he has Deputy Chief Rodney Smith here. I have Chief Jones, and behind us we have Recruit Command Officer James Morris Letcher. Jack Andrade, EMS Transport Chief, was unable to make it this evening, and legal representation Henry Couchman, who is our Senior Legal Advisor. As we move through the presentation, there were 4 core areas that recommendations were made from. The first being recruitment, the second being the hiring processes, the third being promotions, and the fourth being long-term oversights. So we're going to take this, one by one and present to you what the recommendations were and what the results of the recommendations are. So to start out, one of the first recommendations was the task force asked us to publicly post all disqualifiers for public safety positions. And we have done so. We now have all the disqualifiers posted. An applicant can find them online and hard copies, and it's also part of the employment application for each of the public safety positions. The second was making recruitment efforts year-round. Previously, what we used to do is that when we had vacancies, the chiefs and the sheriff would make a recommendation to the county administrator to open up the recruitment period. And we would do that for a period of 90 days and go through the process, set a timeline. Having the opportunity to recruit year-round actually gives us more exposure out in the public because we're not tied to a certain time of the year that we can do this. So we do post year-round for deputy and for patrol officer. We have began testing on a monthly basis for the sheriff's department, and we did that starting August of 2016. And we've been testing on a monthly basis, and that's the written examinations and the physical agilities for police since November of 2015. We're working with the Facet Study Group to determine the appropriate recruitment periods for firefighter, EMT, and MICT. Currently, right now, we are proposing possibly going to a quarterly testing methods with the fire department, but we're working out some things with the Facets group because that's kind of certain items came out in that study as well. Dedicated recruiters. One of the things that we felt that we needed were dedicated recruiters specific to public safety. We were fortunate enough to have a position approved in the budget to hire a human resources public safety recruiter, and I was able to do that this year, January of 2016, and that is Jennifer Phillips, right behind me here. Jennifer coordinates and collaborates with all public safety departments on all of their recruitment efforts. The sheriff utilizes and continues to utilize his training academy staff. The police utilize their public information officer, and fire utilizes their recruit command officer. The other recommendation was regarding our recruiting literature. They wanted to have it dated, online, and hard copies. We've made available to you the most recent recruiting literature that we have. This was developed by Jennifer Phillips. This is a global perspective of the public safety positions. And then we have the one for the fire department on So You Want to Be a Firefighter. We have social media presence, we have Twitter accounts, we have Facebook accounts, and all departments have these social media opportunities there to post our positions. We are continuing to develop new literature as we continue along because this is only the start. You know, we are still reevaluating and we're still going to come up with ideas on how do we get this information out to the community. The next recommendation was enhanced web and technical support for human resources. Currently, the website is under redesign and the human resources page is going to look a little bit different. The human resources page will house anything regarding employment here at the unified government for not only public safety positions, but for civilian positions as well. Because we need to make sure that the public understands and knows the pathways to obtain, a position here at the unified government, because there are a lot of opportunities for our community. There are a lot of professions here that we have. And so we want to make sure that we're getting that message out to our community. Part of the updates on the website, we want to enhance that with video and recruiting information. We're trying to reach a generation that, they're always on their cell phones. So we're looking to possibly doing a snapshot of a video instead of a hard posting that you see traditionally today. If we could just capture a snippet of a video of a police officer, of a firefighter, sheriff deputy, and we can catch them for 1 minute, we can tweet it out, we can put it on Facebook, that could capture, some applicants that way. So that's the direction that we want to head to. And we are hoping that we have all these enhancements ready for the first quarter in 2017. Along with that, we are working with the Chief Knowledge Officer and the Public Relations Office to help us develop other ideas as they relate to media relations and the technology piece. Increase partnerships with all public school districts, KCK Community College and Donnelly College. We have a continued presence with these partnerships. We have a public safety youth forum. We've participated in that. That was hosted by the FBI. We have attended job fairs, career fairs. We had a Core 4 career fair that was jointly with other jurisdictions around, and we had that about a year ago in September. We're actually working on our next Core 4 career fair. We participate in career jumping events, and jumping events they invite us into the high schools, and we meet with freshman students. We talk about the careers that we have here at the Unified Government, tell them all about our jobs and how we got in the positions that we have, and we do that on a routine basis with all of the high schools. We have also attended MARC career fairs, and our recruiters have daily activities into these educational institutions. The redesign of the cadet programs for the police, fire, and sheriff's department. For this, I'm going to turn it over now to Deputy Smith to talk about the redesign of the police cadet program.
Good evening. Our previous cadet program was really, I'd say, an immersion-based system where the officers the cadets would come in. They'd be around the department. Really, it had kind of degenerated into, I would say, cheap labor to do menial tasks, which that worked and they gained experience. But to try to ramp things up, we've changed it to, we got them away from doing menial labor. We got them into various units. They do an 8-week rotation throughout units of the department. During that time, they're coached by the supervisors in those areas. They have to pass a knowledge test at the end to show they understand the procedures and the policies related to that unit. If they don't, they get more training before they can move on, but we push them through there. At the same time, we have a coordinator at the police academy. They help them deal with their personal issues or professional issues, monitor their PT, and just keep track of their movement through the department. And it's a more well-rounded program to get the cadets up to ready to be a recruit and enter the academy.
Yes, we're still working on developing the cadet program for the sheriff's office, which likely won't be ready to go until sometime in 2017, but toward the end of 2017. But we're looking closely at what the police department is doing, and of course we would have to tweak it and tailor it to meet the different duties and responsibilities that we have in the sheriff's office. But I can tell you a significant part of what they will do will also be to return to their high schools and to work with all of the high schools here in Kansas City, Kansas, and Wyandotte County to sort of become the ambassador, the teen ambassador recruiter for those schools. We'll work with government classes, we'll work with counseling staff, and so forth to make opportunities for the cadets to be able to go out and speak to groups of their peers and explain to them what they see as a career pathway in through the sheriff's department, the public safety departments, and how those students in high school can enter into that track. So we're still in development stages, but we'll be ready to go a year from now, if not before.
So as we move to the fire trainee program, we posted that position in June of this year, and I'm proud to say that we were able to post the position, recruit for the position, and hire for the position in about 7 weeks, which is something that we've never been able to do before. And we hired our first class August 11th, so that way they could be enrolled at the community college by August 22nd. And I'm going to turn it over to Chief Jones to speak about the training program.
Sure. And we're pretty excited about the fact that this group is scheduled to graduate from the community college with and hopefully have their EMT certification after they challenge the state test this December. So I think it's like December 22nd, I think, is when they'll finish the class. So, you know, that's a positive thing. We did move quickly with that, brought it online, and got them enrolled, and they're well on their way to getting that EMT certification. Now, what we've also done is with this pre-apprentice firefighter trainee program, is we've established some guidelines that are very specific as far as what we call career enhancement activities within the fire department. So when they're not at the community college, you know, going through EMT training, we have specific study halls and tutoring programs set up, but also within specific divisions within the fire department, they'll be assigned to be kind of immersed within that division and understand all the inner workings of the fire department across the divisions, from communications, you know, to training, to operations, you know, administration. And so they really get a really good perspective on how the fire department operates, you know, from every perspective. And so that's very valuable. Also, depending on the variability of the time frame when there will be a class that they can move into after they get their EMT certification, part of the job enhancement activities may be that we enroll them in a Firefighter 1 course at JUCO, which would just further enhance their ability to be successful in the Firefighter Academy, where they would, when they come out of the Fire Academy, they are certified. They challenge the state test in Firefighter 1 and 2, Hazmat Awareness and Ops. That's just part of the capstone of the Fire Academy. So they also receive that certification. But if they can go into the academy maybe with that Fire 1 certification, that will help them be successful. But it depends on the variability. I mean, the whole goal of this program is to get them into an EMT program, get that certification, have them be successful in that, and that's the minimum prerequisite to be hired as a professional firefighter and enter the academy. So we're excited about that. And you know, the recruitment process went very well in that regard. Like I said, it was very condensed. We were able to be successful. And in the future, we'll just keep developing that and I think get more attention. What we found, we were very successful with Facebook advertising and things like that to get the word out. There were literally, when we did Facebook advertising through these 2 recruitment processes, tens of thousands of hits on that throughout the metro area. So I mean, we know that, and it's a very affordable way to get the word out. So social media, we're tackling that, putting things out through Twitter, and we're, now that we have a technology position in place, we're going to tie all these things together: Twitter, Facebook, our website, and so that there's some synchronicity to it all. So I guess we can move on.
The next was specific to the fire department, and that was to reduce the age from 21 years of age to 19, and we have done that. The minimum age for an applicant to apply for the fire department is at age 19, and we started that in June of 2016. There was a recommendation made to allow permanent residents to apply for Kansas City, Kansas Fire Department. Currently, the facets subcommittee has been established, and we're working on those hiring processes, but we're also researching with the Board of EMS any of the requirements that it takes for licensing an EMT and a paramedic in the state of Kansas. As we move on, and these are going to be related to the cadet programs, we do have full-time equivalencies for the cadet programs. The police cadets, we have 6 positions available. They are filled. 5 of them are filled, and 1 of them is vacant at this time, and we're currently in the process of getting that filled. The fire trainees, we have 8 dedicated positions for the fire trainee program, and those are all filled as of August. And again, the Sheriff's Department, we are going to be proposing, probably in the 2017 amended budget, 5 positions for the Sheriff Trainee Program. The next is an established plan design for the Sheriff's Department regarding staff time. And I'll let the Sheriff speak to the new positions that he received that were funded in the 2016 amended budget and how he reduced overtime.
Okay, so we received those 7 positions in the amended 2016 budget. We started a recruit class today. We fell too short of being able to fill all of our open positions, but with the other vacancies that we had, in addition to the 7 new positions, it will allow us before the end of the year to work on a plan based on the numbers we're seeing in terms of number of inmates in custody. We believe these numbers to hold true and the trends that we've been tracking for the last 12 months plus. We should be able, before the end of December, hopefully closer to the 1st of December, to reel all of our farmed out inmates back in. We're reconfiguring the utilization of the current space in the detention center, and we're moving some inmates around. So for example, the female inmates that are in custody, there are approximately 80 beds in the female housing unit. Currently, we're only housing, between 40 and 50, usually somewhere around an average of 45 females a day. So we're going to shift them to a smaller housing unit and open up that larger housing unit for male inmates once we have adequate staff to be able to staff that housing unit. If we're going to have up to 80 inmates in that housing unit, we're going to have to be sure we have a little more staffing than what we did to watch over 45 females. So we are moving forward with that plan, and not only will the additional staff help us to relieve in terms of reducing overtime, it will allow us to house more inmates in the facility. And we hope to be out of the farm out business before Christmas, certainly. Maybe Thanksgiving, but that'd be a little bit too aggressive.
The next is establish training within the department. The public safety departments, as well as the human resources public safety recruiter, continue to collaborate to develop recruitment strategies and best practices to attract qualified applicants. The mentoring throughout the cadet programs. I will turn it back over to Deputy Smith to talk about the mentorship with the police cadet program.
I touched on it earlier. Our cadet coordinator right now is Officer Brian Terzak. He may retire in the near future, but we have another officer lined up to take that position over. He's their home base for life problems, or since we're dealing with the younger group, he's their point of contact for really anything that they have a question about. On a day-to-day basis, the cadets would be out in various units of the department. They'd pretty much touch all of the command staff and a lot of the first line supervisors. So they're going to get a lot of coaching, and we encourage that, and we encourage a good dialogue between the supervisory staff and the units with the academy, and it's going well so far. So I think we're on the right track.
Right, and as far as mentoring, that's an aspect of this that we're really going to focus on, because what we want to have is involvement. Our training chief, combined with our recruitment command officer, are going to focus on this mentorship throughout the career enhancement activities and the time spent as a firefighter pre-apprentice trainee. But also, after they graduate from the academy, what we're going to do is we're working on a program where we have mentorship captains that would be assigned to the individuals would be assigned to, that they can kind of look after them in a lot of the questions they may have as they develop as firefighters. So bridge the gap with mentoring from the time they start as a pre-apprentice trainee, and for all of our firefighters as they go through the academy and come out of the academy, and as they progress and develop early on in their career, because that mentorship, it's going to go on anyway, because there's always going to be somebody in our paramilitary organization that's in charge. But we want to make sure there's no gaps in that, as far as there's some rotation that goes on within the fire department, from the ambulance to the fire trucks, And so always having that mentorship involved in their development, I think becomes very important in becoming a successful firefighter, not just to get into the academy, not just passing the academy, but in those sensitive years that when they come out of there that they really have to be paying attention because they have a lot to learn. There's a steep learning curve, and so that'll really help in that regard.
And then the accelerated timelines. As you recall, when we first started this, we would develop these timelines, get them approved by the county administration office, and it would take us an extended, sometimes 9, 12 months to try to get through this timeline. What we are trying to do is shorten those timelines now, and in some cases, recently with the police department, we're even trying to eliminate the timelines. Our goal that we have is that if we can get 2 academies on an annual basis for the sheriff's department, 3 academies in a year for the police department, and we're still again determining how many academies we can do for the fire department, we always want to have applicants ready to go and in the pipeline to fill our vacancies. So we are still trying to develop around that area there, and we're continuing, to do research and, just trial and error, trying to see what's going to work and what's not working for us.
Right, and as far as the fire department, a minimum of 2 academies really makes sense. But the other issue, it's whether it's 2 academies, 3 academies, is having enough of those candidates within those academies to account for timing the retirements and the carrying of vacancies, so that we don't have gaps in that regard. So. And that's when it says facets committee discussion, I think that's part of it too, that we're having that discussion so we don't have those gaps in the carrying of vacancies.
The validation of our testing standards. The psychological testing, we have contracted with a psychologist, and there are a number of regularly validated assessments. And our psychologist has advised us that the validations of these tests continue on. Research continues to happen all the time on these tests. And so they have assured us that they are using the most recent tests that have been validated to assess our applicants. The physical agility, we have reached out to standards and we have secured the technical reports for the physical agility, the validation that is associated with each of those tests. We have asked also how much it would cost for us to revalidate those tests as well, because things do change since the time we did have them validated. And they gave us a proposal of an estimate of about $24,000 for each of the public safety departments. That's $24,000 for police, $24,000 for the fire department. And that does not include the travel time that it would take for them to come here to do that. The facets group in the fire department, our study group there, we are having discussions and we're still researching on what way we should go. Should we continue to utilize the standard physical agility test that has been validated and built in, specifically for KCK Fire, or should we go to a nationally recognized physical agility, which is the CPAT? We are still working out the advantages and disadvantages of those tests there. The written examinations, we do have the technical reports on the validations for those exams as well. And for the police and the sheriff's department, the written examination by Standard and Associates, the Kansas Chiefs of Police, Kansas Association Chiefs of Police have also, they all utilize the written examination developed by Standard and Associates for those 2 professions. And the CVSAs, they are conducted by trained officers and deputies, and I'm going to turn that over to Deputy Smith, who can explain what they go through in becoming trained CVSA operators, because Deputy Smith was actually a trained CVSA operator prior to him becoming the deputy.
We currently have 7 commanders on the department that conduct the CVSA exams. Boils down to a voice stress analysis that we use a computerized program to evaluate. But the training for it's a week-long, pretty comprehensive program. It takes a week to get certified the first time around. It's a, you know, complicated thing to use, but really understanding the output, that's kind of the meat of the training. A good solid week of training to get started. Then we have a certification every 2 years. The machine will generally give an indication of truthfulness or possible deception. Generally, if you have the same output as the machine during a test, that that's a good sign. We usually consider that a positive outcome one way or the other. And if there's any discrepancy between the machine and the operator's opinion, you have to get a follow-up with another operator just to verify your results. So it's a good tool, and we discussed it during the task force, but it's more the information you get by using this. We don't necessarily rule somebody out just because of the test results. It's the information that we gain through the comprehensive interview that is really the first phase, of the testing process. So, they're taught how to do the interview. Generally, we try to get people to have good interviewing skills to begin with to do that function, but they receive training on that. They receive training on the use of the tool, and then there's a lot of follow-up, and we check each other's results on a regular basis.
Renee, I'd like to say too, there was a lot of discussion during the task force about the testing, and there's an interest from the public group that worked on this to have a group spend some time working on the validation of the testing standards and reviewing those specifically, because this was a big issue that was brought up repeatedly. The feeling was we had 30-some recommendations, and we wanted to get some things established ahead of that. But there is some interest in coming back and reviewing all of these tests from a public perspective to make sure that people feel good about the integrity of the testing. There's some questions raised about the integrity of the testing and when people are dropping out of the process in the testing process, and just making sure that we have valid checks and balances to know how that's working. So that's something that's yet to come. So if someone asks you about that, let them know that it is something that we're still committed to, but it would probably be another team, a smaller team that would work. But we had so much to get going, it felt like we needed to get the process going before we came back and did that. So FYI.
Mr. Mayor, one final point on that. Previously, we did the CVSA after we gave someone a conditional offer, and there was a little, I think, lack of communication between us and the applicants, because sometimes that would, the information we got during the exam might lead to, a change of the decision to hire the person. And, but they receive an offer and then they were washed out later, which, I think that probably gave people more of a feeling of being slighted somehow, that, it was rigged. We've moved the CVSA, now that takes place on the front end before we give the conditional offers. And, they can find out what exactly the problem was down the road if they have a question why they didn't get to that point.
Yeah,
So
we
that
talked
was-
a lot
that
about
was
that
an
fairness, so I
improvement.
appreciate that change as well. Okay.
We are currently in the process of establishing a physical agility component for the Sheriff's Department, and I'll let the Sheriff speak to that.
This is a pretty rigorous process, and it begins with a very comprehensive job task analysis. So they developed a job task analysis. They surveyed all of the people in the detention center and the supervisors and the commanders, the subject matter experts relative to specific job tasks. So it's very, very comprehensive. Everyone participated in that process anonymously, if you will, and they gather the data. From there, then standard works on moving to a smaller group of subject matter experts and reviewing those and identifying the key ones, the most common ones, the most reoccurring ones, the ones that we have had experience with being problematic, maybe where employees have been injured during the process of performing those essential functions, or whatever the case may be. And then, once again, they continue their development. They are scheduled to be here November 1st and 2nd, and they have developed physical agility assessment test, a series of tests. Once again, they will first meet with the subject matter experts to review those, and they will run the subject matter experts through the test, actually. On the second day, then, we'll be bringing the deputies from the detention center, and they will be running through these tests to be sure they can be completed, but more so for norming and determining acceptable ranges of completion time, and so on and so forth. So once again, this will include all groups of employees over all demographics, genders, races, ethnicities, age, just about every form of diversity that you can think about, in order for this to be statistically validated, test and be able to withstand the rigors of any legal challenge that might come. So there's a study guide developed that once someone makes an application to the sheriff's office, they'll be given the study guide that will review the test and explain the various things that'll be tested. Gives the applicant a chance to prepare in any way that he or she seems fit, so that they don't just walk in cold and do this assessment and they don't have any idea what it's really all about. So I anticipate after they leave here after November 2nd, probably by the end of the month or within 30 days, we anticipate that they'll complete our work and they'll be prepared to come back to us with the final assessment, with the final test. They probably will review with us, ask for feedback and so forth, and then if there's any tweaking to be done. But I anticipate essentially within about 30 days, so around the 1st of December, we will probably be complete with that process with Stannard.
And our physical agility test with the fire department was vetted out and essentially developed in the same way through Stannard and Associates. And as far as the CPAT, which is like a kind of a national test, it's a certification testing, and our physical agility test matches up very well with that test. And we have the additional of the ladder climb, which is, more or less, if somebody has a problem with, being terrified of heights, that may come out in that manner. But the ability just to go up and down the ladder, and with all the safety precautions in place, really is the only difference between our test and really the CPAT. They're essentially very, very similar. And ours has been vetted out and validated in that way. The difference is, like, you'd have to think about the CPAT. If we required just that you had to come in with a CPAT certification that, within a certain time frame, not that you took it 3 years ago, but, maybe it was within the last 12 months or something like that, there's a cost associated with it. I mean, so it may be a couple $100, between $200 and $300 maybe to go out and get this certification accomplished so that you could bring that in, and that would suffice for the physical agility. So, ours is very similar to that, works well. We also give them the opportunity to do a walkthrough so they're familiar with the test and don't come in like the sheriff had talked about, come in just cold and take the test.
Yeah, I do want to clarify too that every applicant is given an opportunity to go through a voluntary orientation on the physical agility test. This gives the applicants an opportunity to touch and feel the equipment, to talk to the subject matter experts, police officers, firefighters, on how to maneuver through each of those evolutions. I will say that the participation level for the voluntary orientation has not been as great as we would have liked for it to be, but it is an opportunity that we do offer to every applicant if they want to take advantage of that. The next is the removal of the EMT as a prerequisite to hire in KCKFD.
Right. Now, it's progress made in that regard. I mean, As far as removing the EMT as a prerequisite entirely, that has not been done. But as far as this pre-apprentice firefighter trainee program and the ability to bring them in and have them establish EMT certification or have the opportunity to do so, that's in place. And that's for the 8 pre-apprentice firefighter trainees. For the regular application process, we still have EMT certification as a minimum prerequisite. But there's a lot of opportunity locally to be able to achieve that goal. There's also a lot of scholarship opportunities for it to be paid for. And there's a lot more flexibility at the community college on how to accomplish that through flexible classroom programs that are either accelerated or during the day or in the evenings. And so that can be accomplished in that way. So the EMT is still a prerequisite as far as minimum prerequisite in order to enter the application process. But we've, with the firefighter pre-apprentice trainee program, there is the opportunity there to establish that EMT after being hired to the Kansas City, Kansas Fire Department, which will then allow them to move into the academy because they'll have that necessary prerequisite. You know, years ago, I think we talked about this before, the state of Kansas, you know, through the Kansas Board of EMS, changed how you have the opportunity to achieve EMT, which really essentially kind of took it out of our hands, and that you had to go achieve that EMT certification essentially through an established program like the community college systems throughout Kansas. You know, whether we can look at opportunities to further remove the EMT prerequisite, or whether or not we can also look at enhancing our ability to achieve the paramedic side of the equation, because that's something we need in addition to EMTs. We always need paramedics along with it. Kind of gets lost in the translation. So, you know, most classes, what we try to achieve is 50% EMT, 50% paramedic. And so trying to grow the number of paramedics through specific programs would help too. But in removing the EMT as a prerequisite, that hasn't happened in its entirety, but we have as a program that works as far as the pre-apprentice trainee program. That's working out well, but it's for 8 positions.
I think I'd like to see a plan. I believe the intent of the task force and the intent of the commission when we adopted it was to remove the EMT as a prerequisite for all hires. Not that we wouldn't hire people that already have it, but we would be able to hire people who don't have it. And Chief, I think you're the leading example of how well that works, because you came in without your EMT and were trained on site and have moved up through the ranks. So I think the concern we have is the barrier to employment for people who can't afford to either take the time off of work to do it, but need employment in order to do it, but otherwise meet all of our criteria, and to do some kind of standardized test that can evaluate the likelihood of them being able to complete it. Obviously, we don't want to set people up to fail, but there are criteria that if you can pass this test, then you're probably in line that you're going to be able to pass the EMT test. And the pathway from within the department and how we incentivize people to move up towards paramedic, because the incentive to be a paramedic, from what I understand, is not very high for very long. And so, but it takes a significant amount of additional training. And how can we provide that in-house to make sure that we're getting people prepared to be paramedics? So the paramedic is a big issue, but I'd like to see a plan come forward that has the full elimination of the EMT as a requirement and a path for the paramedic as we move forward.
How much does it cost?
Go ahead.
So, how much does it cost to become an EMT or a paramedic?
Ballpark figure to become an EMT is about, with tuition and books, approximately $1,500, give or take. And as far as the paramedic program, I would say about $3,500 total.
And are these, would they be called certifications? An
Yes.
EMT and a paramedic? And so, would that require them to do this full-time during the day? This isn't, so for example, I got my master's in business administration while I worked full-time here at the Unified Government. And I also went to school full-time. And I took out loans to do that because I couldn't afford it any other way. Is that option currently not available to people, to anybody that wants to be an EMT or paramedic?
As far as those that want to achieve the EMT, which is a prerequisite to getting on the fire department, there's scholarship opportunities at the community college for civilians to go through that program.
Can you take out a loan to get that kind of certification?
Yes, there's student loans available, but there are also very specific scholarship opportunities to where, I mean, the information I got from the community college is a lot of that funding goes unused annually. So there's a lot of funding that's available out there. There's some minimum requirements as far as I guess you'd call it merit-based, but it's they're minimums.
And why do you think, Chief, the scholarship funding is going underutilized?
I think that, and we're going to assist the community college in that, in trying to make sure that everybody has that information, that those opportunities exist. And the endowment office, I think they call it, they changed the name of the endowment office. Forgive me, I can't remember what they changed it to. But that office is in charge of making sure that those scholarship opportunities, are available, and they process the applications for that process. Now, we had a private vendor that came forward and pledged quite a sum of money for a minority scholarship program for EMT, and that scholarship program exists, but it's limited to, I think, 3 per semester right now. And then there's not a, it's not self-sustaining right now, so when that money runs out, we were trying to get other vendors who want to participate, basically to reload that scholarship fund. But there are scholarships available.
Okay, thanks.
Sure.
So the next recommendation was to provide an explanation if a conditional offer of employment has been withdrawn. We have revisited our letter, and we have made some modifications to that to allow an applicant, if the conditional offer is withdrawn, to provide them with a 14-day window to have an opportunity to meet, have a written request to meet with Human Resources, the chiefs, and the sheriff for that explanation. And we started that in November of 2015. We're also going to ask that they sign a release of information for us as well. The next section is promotions. The recommendation is human resources driven promotions throughout public safety. To begin here, we are continuing to work with the police and the fire chiefs to determine what human resources role is as they relate to the promotional processes. The fire department facets, the labor and management teams are addressing the promotional processes as we speak now. The police department promotions, I'm going to let Deputy Smith speak to the police department promotions, and I will let Sheriff Ash speak to the sheriff department promotional processes.
Well, our promotions are a negotiated item that we cooperate with the Fraternal Order of Police on. Basic agreement is we hire an outside vendor to tell us how to best do it. And it's really a hands-off approach, between the department and the union. We take the professional advice that we pay for, and they help us get through the process. We do cooperate and participate in that. Going forward, the next go-round, we'll keep in close contact with HR on that, but it's really the selection of the vendor that we agree on that drives our process.
So likewise, in the sheriff's office is a term and condition of employment, so it's open to, negotiation with the union, FOP Lodge 40. Where we differ from the police department is, as Deputy Chief Smith said, their contract says we'll completely use an outside vendor, and the vendor will ensure that everything is court defensible and legal and doesn't have an adverse effect on any particular group, and the vendor will ensure that. But the FOP will stay out of promotions, and management will stay out of promotions, essentially. Ours is different in that it actually set forth a process in FOP 40's contract with us that said, you know, there'll be a written test and then there'll be an oral board and it'll be this and it'll be that, and it was, you know, specific. So if it was negotiated in there that way, then to me that meant we could open it up and we could see if they wanted to negotiate it, you know, another way. If they wanted to look at a more contemporary process. Because quite frankly, the last time we had this process back in 2013, there were very few people that were successful in the process. There seemed to be something wrong with that to me. So I asked them if they'd be interested in putting a working group together between management and the union to look at and come up with a process that everybody could be comfortable with and we might have more confidence in, and that actually the rank and file people might have a chance to be more successful at. I think that's in the best interest of the department. I think it's in the best interest of the government. That the more successful candidates and applicants we have, it's no different than hiring. The greater likelihood is we're going to be able to cover all of these particular demographic groups that we're interested in doing and be able to make it fair, and we're going to be able to have opportunities for all people to move up through the ranks. So the union was open to that. The working group met, and over the period of about 40 or 45 days, they developed a process that after some slight tweaking and negotiation, both of us were comfortable with. And then we worked with Renee in HR for HR to overview that process and test to be sure that they were comfortable, and we had also oversight with our legal advisor to be sure that we were doing things legally and properly, and we all would be able to live with this at the end of the day. So we agreed to those terms and conditions. We developed a letter of understanding as an addendum to the contract. Each side signed that, and we are sort of in the middle of conducting those processes now. The written tests have been conducted for sergeant, detective, and lieutenant. The oral review boards are being developed. The oral review board for sergeants is scheduled for Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, and the review board for detectives and lieutenants will follow in the following week, so the week of October the 24th. So we're fairly confident that somewhere by around the 1st of November or just after, we'll have eligibility list. What I can report to you is the failure rate for the written test is significantly lower than what it was 3 years ago utilizing the written test that we utilized. So we have many, many more successful applicants for promotion at this critical initial step, because the way it was written, if you didn't pass this test, then you were out of any process going forward. You were just out. So we have a lot of successful applicants, and all three of those tests representing lots of diversity in just about every way that you can think of.
I have a question. Have we addressed the issue of when a vacancy comes open for promotion and we have a list? There have somewhere in, maybe it's historical or maybe it was in the overall discussion, where the discretion of the promoting chief sheriff reaches a point on the list that either the individual is someone the chief does not feel suitable to promote, or perhaps it was at times you've promoted 5 or 6 of the top people and now you're getting down into the middle of the pack. So the chief would defer promotion until the next testing period, which could be a few months to a year, year and a half. Are you following me?
Yes, sir.
And thus, the allegation was made that at times that had been used to block minority candidates. have we addressed the issue of when a vacancy comes open and the list is still good, and there is a person on that list that's next in line, that promotion occurs? Or does the chief still have, the chiefs and the sheriff, have the discretion to say, we're not going to promote anymore? Thus, as I understood it, you'd use acting lieutenants or acting whatever the position might be to fill the position.
In the police department, the language in the contract specifies that if we have corresponding vacancies, the top 6 people on any list would be guaranteed to be promoted. If they weren't promoted, if for some reason they couldn't be promoted, I believe they get bumped to the top of the next list. So the top 6 people, are protected as long as we have a vacancy associated with, that they could fill. Beyond that, it is the chief's discretion. But in many cases, basically, we have most of our promotion spots filled right now, if not all of them. But the problem is, we take the officers out of patrol every time we make promotions. And I can tell you our staffing level is, sometimes you just can't promote people because you need them at the street level. So, that's kind of a judgment call. I will say for our, I'm sorry, sir, but for our captain's list, we're 6 months into this list, and we have 2 years left for a minimum date on this list, and I foresee likely everyone on that list will be promoted by the end, so it's not like people are getting blocked out. And we don't exclude people from parts of the process. Everybody gets on the list that takes the test as long as they complete all the parts. So it's just where you end up on the list, and if you're in the top 6 and we have the vacancies, you're guaranteed.
Commissioner, the way it works in the FOP 40 contract, once the eligibility list is established, the sheriff could promote from anywhere on the list.
Okay.
With the fire department, historically, we, through promotional testing, according to the contractual language, established the list as a result. And historically, whenever we have an active list and a vacancy occurs, we fill the vacancy off of that active list, period.
Well, I guess I must be wrong then in that I heard during some of this discussion that the picture that you have just painted has not always been true. Am I the only one that heard that during that discussion?
No, I think part of the concern that was raised is exactly, Commissioner, I think you're exactly right, is that we know that the change up here is to look at and you can see under fire, under promotion, Facet's labor management agreement is the issue addressing the promotional process. The fire department is the only one that has it tied to contract status. And so there were concerns raised that the police and sheriff do not tie their promotions to the contract year, but the fire department ties it directly to the contract year, and that is an item that is up for negotiation right now.
Well, I know that I have had discussions with officers that are members of Pride at various times during my tenure. And they will tell you that it would come to their turn and a promotion would not be available, perhaps because of what you just said, because we can't afford to take the people out of the field, whatever it might be. I'm just pointing out my concern about the manipulation of a promotional test, and hoping that what we do as a result of all this, at least in some way, the rules are there. If, as in your case, if you're the top 6, you're going to get your promotion eventually. And maybe that's what needs to be done across the board. Okay, I'm done.
Commissioner Townsend.
Thank you. Good evening, all. And I wanted to go back to part of what Commissioner Walker raised, just so I understand it better, Deputy Chief Smith. If you have the top 6 from a list, and are they guaranteed, are those top 6 guaranteed a promotion? Or what was the discretion that you were talking about earlier, which kind of goes back to what Commissioner Walker raised, the issue. Are they only guaranteed for a certain period of time, and then the process starts over? How does that work?
It's a negotiated item in the contract, but the current list, I believe, goes for 30 months from the time the list comes out. We just had one come out earlier this year, I think May. But if you're in the top 6 on those lists, then there has to be a vacancy. If everything's filled up and there's no vacancy, there's no promotion. But I think what Commissioner Walker was talking about, if you're in the top 6 and there's a hole there and you don't get put in that hole, then you would get moved forward. You know, if we ran the clock out for 2.5 years, someone would get moved to the top of the next list, because maybe there's a reason we can't. We can't make someone a supervisor if they don't have anybody to supervise because they were the person. You know what I mean?
I understand you have to have a place to promote someone to.
But as long as there's a vacancy, it's in the contract that we have to fill the vacancy as long as it's in the top 6. After that, there is some discretion, but I can assure you that, you know, if we have somebody that's next on the list and, you know, we have an opportunity to fill a job, especially with diversity, I don't know why that, you know, that would not be any kind of barrier to what we're trying to do. And we would fill it.
Well, let me ask just a couple of questions, so from my understanding. So you have the top 6. Let's say positively there are vacancies available. Must the promotion go from 1 through 6, or can the promotion come from anywhere within that 6?
No, well, I'm sorry. At the end of the testing process, we receive from the company, I mean, for the captain candidates, the detective candidates, and the sergeant candidates, we get lists. They're in order of how everybody performed on all the various elements of the test. They give us the list how everybody did, so we go in order.
Okay, so it has to go in order. Number 1 goes first, number 2, based on availability.
Yes,
What happens with those top 6 in the various categories, let's say after 30 months? Do you have more tests, or you just pick back up with those? What happens after 30 months?
We start over.
Meaning what?
We contract. If we were under the same contract we're under now, I mean, it's subject to negotiation, so, you know, theoretically we could have a different kind of agreement with the union, but as it is now, we would hire the company or a company again to come back, do an evaluation, develop a test, and, you know, they would walk us through doing the testing procedures.
Colonel, just to clarify, I think, on the answer to your question, if number 5 and 6 are left on the sergeant's list at the end of the 30 months, they become number 1 and 2 on the next test, right?
Only if there was an available spot.
Oh, that we had not promoted into.
If we only had one vacancy during the entire 30 months of this list, and it can go beyond 30 months, 30 months is the minimum date. I mean, it can go beyond that. It's until we get a new list after that. But if there was only one vacancy during the whole time, the top guy would be promoted, whether or not we did it during that 30 months. If there was one vacancy, we never filled it, you know, that guy would be at the top, because that's his spot.
So
If there weren't any vacant spots, if we never had anybody leave in the whole 30 months or until we got a new list, no one would get promoted. There's nothing to promote them to.
But if we were holding vacancies during the time for other reasons, then as soon as we start promoting, however many vacancies we held in that first 30 months would go to the top, up to those 6 that were still left on the list from the previous time period.
Okay, and if there are no vacancies available or held after whatever the designated time period is, let's say 30 months, then all bets are off and you start over again?
Maybe. maybe. If we spent $50,000 or $100,000 and had a test and developed a list, and no one had been promoted off of it, I mean, I wouldn't see us being in a huge hurry to start over again. I mean, our problem is, in some cases, especially with our captain's rank now, our list is going to run out. I have a feeling our list is going to run out way before the 30 months. Right. And we're going to be out of people to promote. So I don't think, I understand your concern, but, we're not holding spots and running out the clock. I mean, we're trying to get people to fill spots, just like we're trying to get people to sit in our academy seats and become police officers. So, we're kind of moving this thing forward. We're just trying to find the people to do it.
Right. Well, I hope that is the case. I too had heard the same thing, some of the same things that Commissioner Walker had heard. So that's why I'm trying to understand what this is, so everybody watching and listening has a better understanding of the basics too. And that's what we're trying to do, is to make sure that there's not some underlying reason that people who are qualified, no matter what they look like, aren't being promoted. Okay. I have one or two other questions, if you don't mind. For Chief Jones, this goes back to the issue of the EMT requirement, and I am happy that to some degree we have a mechanism for people who may be economically challenged, and this was a big challenge to a lot of minorities and women, can get into the training program and thereby take care of that EMT. Here's the question. I know you and I had talked about this before this Congress, so to speak, was developed, and one of the concerns was the curriculum at JUCO, going back a couple of years, that there were requirements for the EMT process that maybe superseded what was really needed to get that EMT certification. And I know there have been some discussion about changing the curriculum. So my question is, we have the EMT training program now, but it was also mentioned that JUCO, is the JUCO training program still as rigorous as it was several years ago, and thereby may have things that the EMT that we're doing doesn't? Not that that is less than what was required, but that may be another stumbling block.
Sure. Now, the actual EMT curriculum is, I would have to say, it's not any more rigorous than any other EMT curriculum in the state necessarily, especially in our metro area. But the prerequisites they had actually don't exist anywhere else but at our community college. In effect, the anatomy and physiology prerequisite, which is still there. Now, as far as our pre-apprentice firefighter trainee program, they waived that requirement as a prerequisite, so that's good news. But we have stayed in communication with them, and that officially the anatomy and physiology is still a prerequisite to the EMT program. But on a case-by-case basis, they're looking at the background of what curriculum they had as far as hard science exposure, et cetera, and determining whether or not they feel that they would pass the EMT class based on that, and that's between the student and the community college. Our recommendation was to drop that anatomy and phys as a prerequisite, and to maybe find another way to better vet out whether or not somebody's going to be successful. Obviously, the anatomy and phys was added to their curriculum to maybe enhance the ability for the student to succeed within the EMT program. But then again, from our perspective, it's an added prerequisite that doesn't exist anywhere else in the EMT curriculum in the state of Kansas. So we would like them to drop that outright, but that hasn't happened yet.
Okay, thank you. That was the question I had. And let's see, one last question. Ms. Ramirez might be the best one to answer, or Chief. With the EMT, can't remember, right, training for fire department class that was taken in August 11th of this year, how many were in the class? Maybe you said that and I missed it. And of those in the class, how many were women? How many were African American? How many were Hispanics, if you have that number?
Yes, we had 8 hires in the class, and I believe we may have that information available. The class makeup for the firefighter trainee program was 2 Hispanic males, 2 African American males, 1 Asian Pacific Islander male, and 3 white males.
Okay. Any women?
No, ma'am.
Okay. All right. All right, thank you. Thank you.
One final thought on the promotions. You know, as the public safety department spoke about them going through the processes, one of the things that I have been in discussions with them about is in determining what human resources role is going to be in these promotional processes, the one thing that I'm asking of them is that at the end, I want the established list presented to my office and as well as the county administrator's office, because as they make these promotions, we actually sign off on the personnel action notices allowing these promotions to happen. So we will be able to validate against the list how they're making these promotions to make sure that they're going in the order that, you know, their list have revealed.
Can I go back just 1 second? And speaking on the issue of diversity, you know, the last couple of classes we've actually hired, you know, a lot of the results of our increased efforts in finding better ways to recruit are paying off. And so what that's, I believe, resulting in is a more diverse pool of during the recruitment process. And so, and then also, you know, you know, the goal is that through that, by having a better diversity in the applicant pool, there'll be better diversity in the actual classes that enter the academy. And I believe we've made we're excited about the increase in the diversity of that applicant pool. It's happened.
Commissioner Murguia, did you have a question?
No, he answered it. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Any further? Or any further slides?
We have one final slide.
Okay.
Just the last thing there, and we kind of hit on this previously, the internal pathway to paramedic certification, and that's still under review. The last slide is the long-term oversight, ongoing training on ethics, gender, and LGBT sensitivity. Human Resources has updated the human resources policies. We've updated the harassment in the workplace policy in April of 2016, which we brought forward to this body for approval. The violence-free workplace in July of 2016, which we brought forward, that addresses these issues. And then in 2015, we actually changed our benefits policy, allowing you know, same-sex marriage to insure their families. We continue to have mandatory trainings for all unified government personnel. That's conducted by Human Resources, and we do train the police, fire, and the sheriff personnel as well in those mandatory policies. The next recommendation was the Human Relations Commission or other structure. This is under consideration by the mayor and commission now. I believe it's with the boards and commissions review. And the last is the increased public safety presence in all Wyandotte County schools. These are just a few of the things that we're doing with the schools. We have presence in USD 500. We have police explorers. We have an OK program. We have our SROs in Bishop Ward, Turner, and Piper. And the reason for that is because USD 500 has their own police force now. The fire department, we have daily recruiting in the high schools. We have the first responder EMR and the EMT first responder courses. And in the sheriff's department, again, that's going to be determined based on the cadet program that we develop in the fourth quarter of 2017. Lastly, I'd like to end this presentation with this process. While it was a difficult process and it was a lot of work for all of our departments to undertake, I do want to say that this has provided an opportunity for Human Resources to enhance the collaborative efforts between Human Resources and the public safety departments. So in my view, I think that this has really been a successful project for all of us, and we are still continuing to develop in areas that, you know, we're starting things, we're trying new things, and our job has not finished. But I would like to thank all of our staff members in each one of these departments because they have worked diligently on all these projects and have dedicated a lot of time, you know, during their working hours and even outside of their working hours to make, to get these recommendations in place.
All right, thank you very much. So we will continue to keep the commission updated on the progress of this. We are a year out, and I think we've made a lot of progress in the first year. And we have some more work yet to do, but I appreciate all the work that all of you have put into this. All right, we are ready to go upstairs for executive session. There is a motion, Commissioner McKiernan.
7 o'clock.
Until, so we have a question. We have more material than we're going to be able to fit in 45 minutes of executive session. We will either need to go past 7 o'clock to finish it, or we will need to go back upstairs after it. We can start our 7 o'clock late. I don't like to do that on a regular basis because the public counts on that coming on TV at 7. But yeah, if we gave executive session till 7:15 and we finished early, then we can come down early. We can end early. We just can't end late. So let's set it for 7:15. I think that's good. Yes.
If you recess to 7:15, you can't start the meeting until 7:15.
Regardless. So if we do 7 o'clock and we're out of time, we will have to come downstairs at 7 and we'll have to go back up if we need to after the 7 o'clock meeting.
7 o'clock?
7 o'clock it is. Then.
Then I move that the commission go into executive session until 7 p.m. to discuss confidential matters related to pending litigation under the attorney-client privilege and to discuss confidential matters regarding strategy related to employer-employee negotiations as permitted under the Kansas Open Meetings Act, and that staff designated by the county administrator be present to participate in the discussion.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We are in executive session upstairs. Thank you.
The commission will reconvene in open session at 7 o'clock p.m. in the commission chambers located on the first floor.